Hi, welcome to the Dead Prophet and another edition of News Through the Eyes of Scripture. I'm your host, Mike Beckett, and our other host is here, Steve Winters, and it is good. It's been a while since we've done one. We did kind of those first four kind of sort of back to back there, but there's been a lot happening in the world since we connected the end of September, I think, last time. There's a lot going on. I've noticed on the YouTube channel that there have been quite a few watches on those ones over the last couple weeks. I've seen them jump up a little bit there, and I'm like, well, we might as well just keep this thing going because there's always something that we need to hear and understand as to what's going on in the world, how it relates to end times, how it relates to our lives, and how it is looked through the eyes of Scripture. I think last time we touched base, I went on my rant about why anybody in their right mind, one, would vote for Kamala Harris,
Not
um,
many did.
but why a Christian would vote for a Democrat that is coming from the perspective of what the Democratic platform stands for. Not that Republicans are the better of the platforms, although they aren't out there killing innocent babies before they're born or supporting legislature that does. But we went kind of down that tangent. We have gone through a little while, a good 8 weeks or so, since the president elect Donald Trump is won the election, actually by a record landslide, which seems to me that I think our country is tired of the liberalism, is tired of the foolishness, is tired of illegal immigrants coming over and setting people who are asleep on a subway on fire and getting away with it. And then we have a country that seems to be, or politicians who seem to be more sympathetic toward the illegal immigrant than they do the innocent bystander. I think it's really interesting that I think it's put the Democrats into a position where they really need to stop and think about what do we stand for? Because if the goal of politics uh, or the goal of your political party is to be there and to represent the American people, apparently this election has definitely sent a message that what the Democratic Party has been doing over the last 8, 12, 16 years is not representing what the status quo of the American people want to be represented. So I think that's pretty clear. Hopefully, they will be able to figure themselves out. I really hope that radical left wing inside the Democratic Party falls apart because as long as they keep that there, as long as we keep, that squad and the people who support the squad and the foolishness and the racism and I mean, we could just go on. As long as we have people who want to support that, then that is going to be damning to the Democrats in the future, I really think.
I think the results of the election were interesting for a number of reasons, but one of the things that I noted, one of the things that I was hoping would be different is I was hoping for some sign that maybe California was coming back from the precipice of absolute looniness. But as it turned out, when all the dust settled and the votes were all counted, um, the the left the left wing agenda that you were mentioning that is seems to be so the rest of the country seems to be so tired of and ready to jettison. It maintained, if not strengthened, itself in California, which it's a large state. There's a lot of business and industry there, a lot of population there. It's really a little bit concerning that with a candidate as bad as Kamala Harris was, and I know she was a native daughter of California, but I'm really surprised that that down the ticket offices went so thoroughly Democratic, even in areas where that used to be strengths of
Yeah,
Republicans.
yeah.
I mean, the Republicans still lost seats in the all along the left coast. Everywhere else that wasn't the case. So I think that my read on that is that the country can continues to be very divided. I think that some of the divide in age broke down a little bit this past election cycle. I think the divide ethnically broke down a little bit, but I think that in those enclaves of activism, and maybe even we could say global warming activism, because I don't think any place is more active in that than California, perhaps, that isn't the case there, that it seems like they've doubled down and entrenched themselves even more so, which I think doesn't bode well,
Yep.
for the country to get up on a trend that can be maintained and that could lead to a revival of traditional American values, or even just some sensibility in terms of national defense, securing borders.
Yeah.
I mean, people, I think, are,
Even fiscal responsibility should be a sign right
oh
there.
yeah, that's gone.
I mean, look at the end budget of the deficit of the Democratic Party of Kamala Harris's campaign. I mean, how many hundreds of millions of dollars is she still in debt from the campaign
Well,
that she lost?
she raised more money than Trump by far. So I mean, it's like, how in the world can you run a campaign that badly?
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, if that just shows the foolishness of fiscal responsibility, I mean, that's what our country was saved from
well,
as a
well,
result of it. It's just that alone.
well, isn't it a Democratic mantra for the most part that if you throw money at a thing, you're going to make it better? And that's just not true.
Yeah.
You can look at education, for instance, that's your background.
Ugh.
When you look at something like homeschooling and private Christian schooling across the country, folks spend in those areas of education anywhere from like 25% to 40% of what they do in the public education field. And the results are always better. They're
Yeah.
better in testing, they're better in preparation, they're better in just about every measure that you can measure. Uh, it's like you can't just throw money at a thing. You actually have to spend it on the right things.
Yeah.
You have to do the right things. You
Hmm.
can't just throw money at problems and
Hmm.
expect it. I think when you see I mean, you could have run several third world countries for like, more than a year on the money that Kamala Harris spent on her
Yeah.
campaign.
We could have paid off a good portion of our national debt. Um,
Which I think that would be an interesting thing to do, is that for all those politicians, that are sitting in office now, term limits would be the best thing, but my goodness gracious, short of that, let's just stop the thing that drives them staying there over and
yeah.
over again. Let's not let them take away their campaign funds with them.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a golden parachute
Mm-mm.
that they can, raise up all kinds of money. If they don't use it, then they get to take it with them. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked about that last time. I mean, just
Yeah.
the foolishness of the idea. And like I said, I just sit back and I think I think finally um it, it it must be bad enough in this country for those in the backwoods of the rural America to have to actually get out of their house to come vote. I mean, that's what it seems like anymore. It's like when we have a complete turn that like surprises your all of your media. And then, of course, your media can't emotionally handle the fact that not everybody is going to agree with you. The emotional breakdowns that happened across CNN and The View and MSNBC and I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, you know what? So Trump lost last time. I wasn't out there. You didn't see Fox News crying and having mental health breakdowns, but that these people had mental health breakdowns, obviously. And it just goes to show that look, when you put your hope in man, when you put your hope in the things of this world, when you put your hope in the things that are not going to be here, 5 years, 10 years from now, you have no hope. But the reality is, you put your hope in Jesus Christ and you put your hope in the Word of God and you back your life and have your life focused on that. Then the results of the elections are the results of the elections, and the understanding is that God is in control. and he knows best. But we're living in a world where, and in a society where we've told God that we don't want you here, we don't acknowledge you, we don't even recognize you. And then when these things happen, you see emotional mental health breakdowns over the foolishest, most foolish things.
Yeah, well, the one of the things that I've noticed, just this is anecdotal, nothing more, but one of the things I've noticed when I'm dealing with folks that have bought into um, like the woke agenda, the global warming agenda, all of the things that have kind of like coalesced into this liberal enclave or this liberal movement that,
DEI trainings.
oh yeah, that we see today. The thing about it is one of the things that I think is so notable about them, and now folks that are right wing, and I hate saying that even, but folks that are religiously conservative, we have always been blamed for being reactionary, being emotional. We have always been, been treated as if somehow or another. Every thought that comes out of our head is evil. All the intents of our heart are bigoted and rotten. And so the other side, in really dispossessing God in their process of thinking, they've come to the place where they actually have bought into the notion that somehow or another people that think something like what we may, that we are evil itself, and that's why they're so emotionally broke down, is that they saw this as a some kind of a contest between good and evil, and they fear that evil has won. It's like if Christians thought that way, and I think that sometimes we have a little bit like back in earlier times, maybe we could say in some of the elections in maybe the 90s or
Mhm.
whatnot, you end up being disconnected from reality, and you end up being just filled with anxieties that are absolutely unnecessary. Elections come, elections go, people win, people lose. um, the country may start going down a path that's going to lead to bad repercussions as a result of some of those things. But ultimately, nothing is going to happen before it's time. And nothing is going to fall before God says it's time for it to fall.
Yeah.
And somehow or another, you just have to have a steady head, a steady mindset, and not overreact to these passing things. Now, I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't things that are important. You mentioned, the abortion issue. Stopping people from killing innocent human beings at their most vulnerable. That is an absolutely, not only is it a noble cause, but it's a godly cause,
Hmm.
and it's absolutely essential for the health of society. If that is not stood against, if that is not made to be seen for what it is, the repercussions will be that the country will fall into darkness, in darkness that I don't know that we've seen since, maybe the fall of the Roman Empire, that kind
Right.
of a thing.
And it was interesting. There's somebody I'm friends on Facebook. She used to Dad was a pastor. She used to be a great Bible quizzer. Now she's a professed atheist. Raised her daughter as a boy, or lets her daughter be raised as a boy, or now a son, but she's really genetically a girl. And she posted something online right after Trump won. Well, again, my son is unsafe in America, and I'm thinking he's not unsafe. She is not unsafe in America. It's
If he
just
doesn't
that.
if he doesn't put a bomb under somebody's bus seat, he's fine.
That's right. Yeah, there's nothing to worry about. I mean, just because we want to define gender as two genders according to the sex you were born as, most science and doctors usually do, does not mean we're hateful people. We just choose not to follow the foolishness of this transgendered garbage. But it doesn't mean we're hateful people. And I think, like you had said, it's like the CNN feels evil has won because it's the way it goes, or something like that. And I think, of course, it's yet to be proven what's going to be done in this administration, although I think there's enough people on his cabinet to pay the national debt off. Uh, enough people on that cabinet that have plenty of zeros in their bank accounts that if they were to just put a portion of their money, they all tithe 10%, our national debt could be gone. You know, um, So there's that. We had talked about probably back in when we were talking about Trump coming back in the race, looking like he'd be the Republican candidate, and we had kind of talked a little bit also. I know you and I had talked shortly after Biden had won last time, and Trump's time's over. It's kind of where we're going. We're looking at what's going on in the Middle East. We, kind of said in one of the episodes that, even if Trump got elected, Trump's main focus really, and I think the positive part of his administration is going to be focusing on domestic policy and domestic issues here in the United States. I think Trump's ability to try to fix what we've already talked about as God's timetable already unwinding. I think the ability of seeing Trump try to go fix that is really not going to be in the best interest, one, of the United States or this administration, because I don't think at this point there is anything Trump's going to be able to do on the international scale that's going to stop what is already going on in the Middle East. I do know Trump recently had said, or had an article out, was it maybe a week ago, that he's not planning to intervene in the situation in Syria. He's not planning to intervene in, I think, one or two other things over there in the Middle East. He'd like to see peace in the Middle East, but it seemed that that was not going to be his main focus when he gets in. His main focus seems to be to clean up this country. So when we look at that, and we look at the powerhouse that America used to be on the global scale, I think as we move forward with this administration and as we move forward with the timetable, I think that we've talked about as God's timetable, I don't think really America's going to have any say, any input, or any ability to stop what's going on over there in the Middle East at this point. Even with the stroke of a pen, I would think one of the first few things Trump would do is reinstate the pipelines, reopen the things that are going to help us here, because when we look domestically, we are a disaster. We're paying gas prices that are almost three times as much nationally than what they were when he left office. What I'm paying for groceries is outrageous. I think that should be and probably will be his focus. I think America's involvement in Middle Eastern affairs, as far as that international perspective goes, I really don't think we're going to have much of an impact. Would that be a fair assessment?
I think it's right on the Middle East. I would say even probably not more than that, even though the chaos in Syria will be something that has the potential of becoming something that requires a lot of attention and focus. I would say it would only become that is if the only way that's going to happen is if something like ISIS reemerges in Syria. I think the likelihood of that is down. The interesting thing is that Israel has strengthened its position in Israel or in Syria. Turkey has strengthened its position in Syria. So, it's like there was a vacuum, of course, when Assad falls, and now, all of the former opposition parties or groupings are endeavoring to try to coalesce and come together and take care of things. But already Turkey and Israel are stepping forward to fill some of those gaps. The Kurds are taking care of their own affairs to get into a place. So as long as something like ISIS doesn't arise, I think that he's not going to bother with that because it's just not going to end up being important.
Well, just was it three? What are we, the 20th? So just 3, 4 days ago, they're calling Turkey's leader the new Putin as he's eyeing power in Syria as Israel watches nervously. He said if Turkey decides to arm the rebel forces, it's unclear how Israel will respond and whether it will be able to thwart the transfer of American-backed weapons. So it looks to me like he's going in and he's going to kind of try to take over Syria and have that influence being backed by not only Turkey but also Qatar as well. And again, President Trump's made it very clear he's going to stay out of that mess and let that handle itself. But their president wants to fill that vacuum that's there and try to use that as a power piece to, it sounds to me, to, from his perspective, get rid of Israel or have a major play on impacting Israel's continued mobility as it expands itself, obviously north through Gaza, has cleaned out Gaza, moving itself and even further up. It seems to me that he is looking forward to or looking for a way to cause Israel to be halted.
Well, it's a match right now, isn't it? I mean, between particularly Turkey and Israel. Iran has been spanked, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah.
Um, and with the fall of Assad in Syria, there's just a whole lot to the infrastructure coming from that direction that just isn't there anymore. So,
And
um,
they're having major energy crisis issues right now. I mean, they're
yeah,
shutting
yeah.
universities, college. I mean, they can't even keep their daily electricity going. It's like rolling electric power outages here like we had in California. I mean, it's a disaster.
Well, that's kind of scary in a way though, because when the folks that actually are leading that country are a little unhinged, like that's what I would classify the Ayatollahs as a little unhinged. You just it's like cornering a wildcat. You just don't know what kind of snarling and scratching is going to come out of that. It could be a very dangerous situation. So it is a dangerous situation. I think Trump will concentrate on trying to find a way to taking out the uncertainty around the Ukraine. I think that's an international thing he has to do. And then I think the big international thing that he isn't going to be able to avoid, no matter how bad things, how bad the situation domestically is, China has got to be dealt with. There's been it seems to me, a relative disengagement. I mean, China's running around the Philippine waters anyhow, running around the waters of Vietnam, running, into even pushing things as far down as Indonesia, plus all the other things that China does internally, and the pressures that they exert on Africa and mining there. It's just something has to be done, right?
And the continued threat that they're still going to take over Taiwan, which I
Well,
sit here
that's
and
the
I
powder keg, right?
yeah, and I sit here and wonder, is it something they're going to do right before or right after Trump becomes president? Because I think that the way it would I mean, there'd be two different, obviously, totally two different administrative perspectives here. I mean, you've got the Biden administration that's got like, the tail between their legs at some things, and I think would just be like that, no big deal, it's not our problem, or maybe they would step up and do something. And when Trump was in, he was much more forceful and much more seemed to offer threats that at least had some kind of backing, or at least if there was no backing, it came across as if if you do, you will get spanked. You know, so you
Yeah.
have to wonder how far will they push it. And I know we've talked on the show several times about really China's move is probably going to be totally hinged on what happens over in the Middle East there. I mean, if we've got, Russia who is withdrawing from Syria and Russia, although they did
They're
welcome,
probably out now. I mean, they were moving fast.
and and of course the instability in the Ukraine if Trump does come in and force them out. I mean, Russia, what do they got left to do but to join Turkey and Iran in a potential invasion or supportive invasion of Arab forces going in and trying to obliterate Israel. And if that happens, then China's got the green light because nobody's going to be paying attention to them. And by the time we realize what China's done as far as maybe taking over Taiwan and a few other areas, it'll be done.
The
It'll
time,
be like it'll be like a North
I
Korea invasion, really. It'll be like they're there,
well,
they're done. Here we go.
well, they may make a move on Korea. I mean, it's obvious that they don't want anyone's voice to be, dictatorial, or actually the thing that is developing policy. They don't want anyone's voice in Japan, Korea, the Philippines, Vietnam, even I would say in places like Tajikistan and Kazakhstan. And I just see China just trying to develop hegemony, across that entire part of the world. And I mean, they're even fighting with India.
Well, they've been
which,
fighting with India for years over the Kashmir.
yeah,
Between them, Pakistan, and India, and I've always said in my geography classes when I teach, or if we're talking about world history or something, and that topic comes up, I would say, you watch one day China's coming and is going to take it all, because Pakistan and India combined do not have enough nuclear power, let alone arm manpower to stop China from doing that. So at some point in time, that will probably all belong to China, and why would they stop at just that?
well, I think that they'll stop at a little bit more than that. Well, they'll stop at where they're going to stop at in that area, mainly because it is what is readily manageable. But the thing that they'll end up gaining from having that is that they're going to have the voice in the world like America had after World War II. I mean, their voice is going to be the one that matters in South America, in Africa, I would say even in Europe, to tell you the honest God truth. They have just so insidiously infused themselves into the political and economic spheres in all of those places that they're wiser and more inscrutable than American business ever has been in trying to wheedle in and get a seat at the table in all of these places. So I think Trump will have a necessity of getting involved with foreign policy. I think the major aspect of that, the quickest thing, is going to be trying to tamp down the fires in the Ukraine. But I think that the major policy issues and the things that are going to require strategy across a number of fields and endeavors is going to be trying to find a way to kind of get eye to eye even with China again. I mean, I think China is ahead, actually standing kind of taller than America in places like Africa and starting to in South America. Just because of the sheer audacity and just kind of in some ways the quietness at which they have infiltrated all of these areas of influence and economy. So he's going to have that. But domestically, the biggest thing he's going to have to do there, and it's going to require some attention, and who knows how much attention. But I mean, he talked about draining the swamp. I don't think anyone realized how broad and deep that swamp was. It's going to require some effort. Now he's doing something interesting. You mentioned his cabinet. I mean, it's kind of been, unique, I think, for a president to bring in so many outsiders. This is not a political cabinet. This is a cabinet in which Trump thinks that he can get something done, which is surprising to me after being there for 4 years. I would think that he would think nothing gets done in Washington.
Yeah.
But it just, I don't know, he kind of like lives on that kind of challenge. It feeds him. So we'll see.
We'll definitely see what ends up happening. I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see what international influence he has. I think you're right. He'll probably focus on the Ukraine thing, although Putin, as early as today, says that he's striving to complete what he started in the Ukraine.
He knows who's coming, right?
Right. He wants to get it done, but at the same time, Ukrainian intelligence just also put a report out that North Korean troops suffered heavy losses. I don't know what the deal was, but the North Korean troops that maybe Russia might have been hoping to capitalize on, maybe to help with Ukraine somehow, because of that whole alliance between them, Iran, China, that there's an issue with the ability for North Korea to step up because of some recent losses that they've suffered. And then
He apparently put them over in the Kursk, in the area that the Ukraine had actually invaded in Russia, and apparently they were not equals to the Ukrainians at all. Of course, Ukrainians have they're not really doing what they're doing by infantry, really. I mean, it's all the drones and aeronautical ability to put explosives at the right place at the right time,
Well, and there's something to be said too when we think about that. When you think about North Korea, I mean, North Korea is a closed society. You don't go in and you don't come out. It's not like you're going to vacation. Oh, I'm going to go vacation on the beaches of France, because if you do, you're never going to come back from the beaches of France. So you have to wonder sometimes, as much as North Korea is drilled and drilled and drilled and drilled, I would think without the backing of the Chinese army and or the Russian army, really, I don't think North Korean army, when it comes to foot soldier, is really going to have the ability to be successful. Because it looks to me like all they do inside their bubble is train and put on the pomp and circumstance. But I often wonder how really reliable would the North Korean army be? I mean, there's lots of them, but how reliable would they be when facing a country that actually has a budget and has been involved in wars outside of their own country? You would think that without the support and the manpower of other countries, North Korea would flop on the battlefield.
Oh, I think you're right about that. I think you're absolutely right about that. I think that they're probably underfed. I think that their training is probably not of the open-minded sort where you would have genuine kind of war games going on that really test the ability of people to strategize, react, all that kind of thing. I know that
Yeah.
their weaponry would be and their training for weaponry would be very limited, it would seem to me.
I was going to say, and even if you let them go out and fight with China somewhere or go out and fight with Russia somewhere, they're not going to come back. So,
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like if you were a North Korean and you were sent to the Ukraine and now you're in the Kursk, right? And you're looking out and you're seeing, wow, fields of grain, you know, houses, there's electricity.
yep,
It's like, wouldn't you like say the first Ukrainian person I see to, I'm going to surrender.
yep,
It's like, are you going to put up a tooth and nail fight in a situation like that? I think absolutely not. I think
yep.
that was more of a parlor trick, maybe some kind of an advertising gimmick than sensible strategy. What did they have,
Yeah.
like 10, 20,000 North Koreans? It's like
It's a drop in
10
the
would be
bucket
saying,
compared to Russia and China and Iran. I mean, you- when you think about it, the reality is the scary part of North Korea is that we really don't know their nuclear capability. Our intel doesn't, because what we get are only little bits of intel. So we really don't know how their nuclear capability is, and if it is what they say it is, then that is a threat to the global community. It's even more of a threat because of the alliance that North Korea has with Iran, with Russia, with China, because those other three powers also have pretty stabilized nuclear proliferation to decimate, their enemy. So the scary, questionable part about North Korea is if they have what they say they have in nuclear proliferation and missiles, that's where the concern would be. I would not lose sleep on their manpower.
well, the thing about it was, I can't remember off the top of my head. I can't remember if it was in Trump's first term or it was Obama before him. But the Russians and the Chinese both there was an effort to try to curtail North Korea's nuclear ambitions, and it looked, especially in the press that we get here in the West, it looked like we had partners in Russia and China in trying to do that. And then there came at a certain point when it came like maybe America was feeling its oats and thinking, if they're not going to do it, we're going to do it, that we actually ended up seeing from those countries, no, 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 no. You take a step toward North Korea and it's war with us. And so, it's one of those situations where they're unwilling to do anything about it, but they are willing to keep us from doing anything about it. I doubt that they have a whole lot more control, but Russia must have something to get North Korea to send them the troops that they are. Russia has some kind of leverage. Putin has some kind of leverage in North Korea. So the whole China issue, right? I mean, all of this revolves around that. A little bit of Russia, but I mean, so much of all that's going on over there really revolves because, in the first Korean War, that's what turned the tide. You had Russian pilots; they weren't really accomplishing anything for North Korea back in the 50s, early 50s. And when MacArthur kind of went rogue and did what Truman told him not to do and started, invading the North and putting North Korea's existence in jeopardy, then all of a sudden we had hundreds of thousands of Chinese troops pour in.
2 million. Your
Yeah,
history books say 2+ million Chinese troops come flying through the border that day after Thanksgiving, and within a matter of 6 weeks, they're pushed right back where they started from. I mean that's a
and then
lot.
suddenly South Korea was in jeopardy of existence.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's did we learn the lesson from that? I think we probably did. Is that North Korea is just not a place that we should that it's not a hill we should die on. But
Mm-mm.
at the same point in time, the craziness that's
In
there.
there. It's definitely an enigma when it comes to global power because we don't really know the impact nuclear wise from them. And I think that's the scary. And the other thing with I was reading an
We
article. I
know
think
they
it
can
was
shoot missiles.
we do know that. The article I was reading this morning on Newsmax was talking about Iran's Ayatollah in the ninth inning, because it was saying their failing economy and their current energy crisis. With Donald Trump now coming into office, where are they going to be players, and how's NATO going to get involved if they are to do something against Israel? And did their attempts to try to annihilate Israel really cause their political, if you will, internal demise, which would make sense because Israel just waited until the right moment to attack and hit some major key places in Iran. But again, the other concern about Iran would be the similar thing to North Korea. Although Iranian troops, I think, are prepared, much more equipped, and I think
Mm.
foot to foot soldier, that would be a concern. Their nuclear proliferation and all of their abilities is a high concern, much more than North Korea. But the big scary factor here, I think, for if we're to look at end time stage here, is the alliances that are amongst all of them, and the fact that Turkey's coming in and can play all four of those pretty well.
Yeah,
I think that's
like a
the big
puppet.
thing. Yeah, no kidding. It's like here you have Russia, who is its own in and of itself. If we're to look at military power here, we look at the nuclear power Russia does have. Russia does have the mobilization of troops, although I think their mobilization of troops and their foot to foot combat has taken a hit. I do not think they are quite as strong as they were a year ago, but I do think they are still strong enough, 2, 3+ million strong, to be a concern. Iran, obviously, foot soldier wise, nuclear issues. North Korea, the nuclear issues. China, on all levels of military, that would be a concern for me. And
Well,
the fact
just
that,
they can produce
yeah,
the weaponry that's necessary
to do it.
to to cause problems everywhere.
And then the fact that those four are all aligned and have shaken hands and agreed to be there for one another. And then Turkey has come in and has befriended everybody. I mean, Turkey's
Listen,
befriended Israel,
well,
and at some time it's like, Israel, let's support Israel, and then the very next sentence it's let's all attack and kill Israel. So I mean, he's playing the global
he can
realm
do it.
wonderfully.
He can do it so well because here's the thing. He's a member of NATO.
Yeah, that's it.
Turkey's a member of NATO. So what he can do if he plays, in the shadow world very well, he can get other players to do his, anti-NATO kinds of things, like attack Israel, right? He can get them to do the dirty work. And then when they get destroyed, because we all know what's going to happen if somebody tries to come after Israel, it's,
Yeah.
God's going to step in and things are going to suddenly look a whole lot different. But see, then he has the this unique position, playing things the way that have been played, to step into that vacuum and be the hero, to be the
Yeah.
the one who's trying to bridge all the barriers between enemies and bring peace and all of that kind
And
of
I'm
thing.
and I'm sure with all of the alliances that he's recently, I shouldn't say alliances because he's always had the Arab alliances from the Arab nations because of Turkey being Turkey. But I think
Well,
with all of the recent political interactions he's had with those Arab countries, I think he is financially set to do what he needs to do. And he's not, no matter what happens over there, Iran's the one that's financially broke and energy broke here. Turkey's not, although I'm sure Turkey was the instigator to get Iran to do what Iran, like you said, needed to
yeah.
do. So Turkey's going to come out financially fine. And in the end, and everybody else
When
is
the
going to
dust
be
settles,
broke.
he's going to be the only one riding a
Yeah,
horse, right? I mean,
yeah, no,
he's got no, he has people in Libya. I mean, that whole network that ends up being the Ten Horns, right? It's all there, just on the shelf, almost ready to go on a moment's notice. All of that could happen so quickly,
Mhm.
just incredibly quickly. Even the whole notion of a battle that would look like a fulfillment of Ezekiel 38 and 39. That's going to involve Russia. It's going to involve Iran. It's going to involve Libya and a few other nations as well. But all of that is it could come into play so quickly.
And the scary thing is it could happen like that. Like not just quick, like we could wake up tomorrow morning and it'd be like, whoa, this has already take place
All the
because
pieces are in place.
yeah, and the interesting thing my wife was saying, we were out yesterday because the recent shooting down of the Azerbaijan plane supposedly was a mistake from, I think I read this morning that they believe that from intelligence that Russia made a mistake and thought it was a drone. You know, those drones that we're getting from
Yeah.
aliens. I don't know if you've heard that story recently in the news. Like all of these drones are from extraterrestrials. That's what's been the buzz around the liberal media. And my wife said, wouldn't it be funny? Because again, we've always joked, and there's always been this joke amongst, you know, the rapture folk that we're all going to be raptured and we're going to be taken out by aliens, and aliens abduct all of these. But like, it's like we've got these drones that the media is saying are extraterrestrial, and we've got all this stuff happening over in the Middle East. We've got, it's yay.
It's like this, right?
That's
Every
right.
Everything weaves together. All well, that's and for people like me, who my life and my living to try to exposit the Word of God, and I see these pictures basically drawn in the Bible of how this can all come together and how this will look, and then I look at the headlines and world affairs and whatnot. I'm like, whoa, this is a strange match here, and it
The
makes
parallels are just way too close.
there's a show I used to watch, NCIS. A lot of people, in my generation watch that
Yeah,
show, but the main character Gibbs, amongst other things, he used to always say, "I don't believe in coincidences," and it's kind of like that kind of scenario for all of us. Is like all of these little pieces in the field of geopolitics are just kind of like being placed at the
right
right
place.
place at the right time,
Hmm.
and there's like nothing really has to happen that would set off alarms or trigger anything for this to come to play or into place. It is just carefully, all just with no one noticing. It's all come to the place where it's just
Yeah,
right there.
yeah,
And I still think that the thing for us as Americans that might be a little scary about all of this is I just don't see America biblically as a player,
yeah.
and you just don't go from the world's only surviving superpower to not a player without something unfortunately pulling the rug out from under your feet.
Well, I saw that documentary that was in our chat group on Long Valley,
Oh
and
yeah,
I think if I'm not mistaken, it's only been about 5 6 weeks, and there was some major like 2.8, 3.2, I think, like action around Long Valley.
yeah.
If I followed my geological thing correctly, because I'm like you, I probably check it every couple days. I know there's been a lot out west, Wyoming. Has had quite a few little tremors. That was just interesting because if those two cauldrons go, we're going to be back in the dark ages here, and doing everything
Yeah,
we can just to survive.
well,
Because
and
you're going to
you
have
were
a nuclear
mentioning
winter.
well, and you were mentioning, the nuclear wild card that North Korea brings to the picture, and how that could suddenly flash into something that
Hmm.
would, end up the United States and Russia and China emptying their arsenals for the most part. Any of those things would do the job. I mean, even something like COVID only, concentrated on the US could pull off that kind of a thing. And
Yeah,
when I say like COVID, I mean actually seriously deadly. COVID, it's not that it wasn't deadly. It's just that, the whole affair was so oversold in the press. It's really hard to try to get a handle on exactly how deadly and dangerous that whole thing was. But
The other, I'm
anything
sorry.
could take the U.S. down. And it doesn't have to destroy the U.S. It just has to make it incapable of being a player.
Well, I'll tell you the other thing I was reading about. I'm going to pull it up here because I know when we had talked before, we talked about how Israel was going to probably push out Hamas, push into Syria, and push into Lebanon,
We look like
targeting
prophets, don't we?
yeah, targeting the Iranians though. They were focusing on not only Hamas but Iranian terrorists and Iranian-backed groups, which we have seen over the last couple weeks take place. Which I think is why Turkey is so worried about Syria, is because of Israel's military greatness at this
Effectiveness.
point. Yeah, at this point. But I read something else. I think it was this morning, or yeah, it had to have been this morning because I pulled it up. Israel, Netanyahu is getting to started to go after the Houthi in
Hmm.
Yemen, which the Houthi are an Iranian-backed terrorist group. Now, if we look, I'm trying to figure out why this is important because Israel's over here and Yemen is way over here. From what I'm understanding, Israel struck the airports in Yemen, so all the way on the other side of the Middle East. Are they planning to go in like across the Middle East into Yemen? Are they planning to expand? I mean, it doesn't really say, but the other that Israel has made targets within Yemen itself, within the capital city, and destroyed airports, and is targeting the Houthi, who are Iranian-backed terrorists that they believe also are going to are have been involved in this Hamas and destruction and attacks against Israel. So I'm interested to see how all of that plays off because the Mediterranean Sea is where Israel is. We're all the way over on, across the other side of the Middle East, heading into Eurasia. So I'm not kind of putting a picture together unless Israel is just to the point we are going to annihilate at this point anyone who's connected to our enemies. We are going to completely go after them all. And I don't know if
Well,
that's going to be the agitator that gets everybody else coming back to Israel. But when I read that this morning, I was like, I'm not trying to, I can't put the two things together because one's over here and one's all the way over here on the Saudi Arabian Peninsula. So on the other end, so I'm not quite sure.
did you see that article a couple days ago? And I'm not buying it. This just does not seem kosher to me. But we had two, I think they were F-22s shot down in the Red Sea by friendly fire with the task force that we have there trying to deal with the Houthis floating around in the Red Sea or Persian Gulf, someplace over in there. I actually wonder if the Houthis aren't responsible for those aircraft going down, or even if the Israelis were by accident, which to have our own missile carriers or missile destroyers shoot those down. That's hard for me to believe. I mean, you would think we would understand the transponders and that it would be virtually impossible to do that. One, you would maybe say, oh, well, everything man-made has a flaw someplace, but
But two of them,
have two go down, that kind of is stretching credulity, it seems to me. So there's something there that we're not being told.
yeah,
And so, it makes me think, why aren't we being told? And it's either someone did something that we didn't think that they could do and we weren't considering it, like maybe the Houthis, or it's something that a friend did, like Israel, that was completely accidental, but they don't want to get out in the press for fear that the kind of backlash that would
yeah,
come
yeah.
against Israel if that was the case. I mean, I don't know which way I lean on that, but I know this: I don't feel like we've been told the truth about
Yeah.
that. Now today there's an article about Israel renewing attacks in Yemen, so it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Mhm.
If maybe the Houthis did not do something that they weren't supposed to be able to do. We
That they're
don't
doing.
want to put that in the press to let people know that we're
Yeah.
vulnerable, so our friends in Israel are doing some heavy lifting for us.
So I guess it comes to that part where we always do at the end. So what do we think between now and the next time we have our show? What do we think is going to end up piecing together here? Because there's a lot of variables over the next 6 to 8 weeks. There's a lot of variables that are going to be into play here. We are just was it
Watch Syria.
4 weeks away from a presidential inauguration. We have a whole bunch of stuff going on over, and you're saying watch Syria, so I'll let you start.
I think between now and January 20th, which, that's Trump being inaugurated, we know that Putin is going to make moves in the Ukraine during that time. I think he's probably going to roll the dice, and we're going to see more of the kind of missile barrages that we've just seen recently,
Yeah.
for the
Merry
power.
Christmas.
Yeah. He's going to try to get that done as soon as he can in that period. So, from January or from December 20th to January 20th, we already seen, at Christmas time. I think in the next week or so, he's likely to do that at least once or twice more, um, because he'll want to get that done early in that month rather than later in that month. I think he wants to would want to have the last week before Trump comes into office to be something that is, not marked by massive, questionable attacks from Russia. So that's what I think he'll probably do. And then I think Putin is looking to make a deal with Trump. I think he wants out of Ukraine. I think he realizes that it's highly doubtful that he can be forced out of the areas that he wants, like the Crimea and the Donets. I think that he's going to be open to some kind of dealing, and I think the Ukraine is going to have it jammed down their throat, whether they like it or not, mainly because they can't fight it on their own. I think, look out there. But the thing in Syria that I think that will be a telltale sign is how entrenched does Turkey push its presence in northern Syria? What they doing that looks like it's basically preparing a staging area. And as far as Yemen goes, that's a little bit of a wild card.
Well, that's what I said when I read it this morning. I'm like, what in the world are they thinking? I could see if Yemen, the Houthi group were in Jordan or, northern Syria or northern Lebanon because Israel's already started to plow through with a mighty force. But this is on the other side of the peninsula, and I was just trying to piece the thing together. I'm like, to me, there's a couple pieces of the puzzle that are missing. Like you said, some things that we maybe aren't being told. But what do we should we be thinking about when it comes to our lovely Israel and what's going on over there? I mean, because the reality is, it's just a matter. It seems to me that Israel has its area secured
Yeah,
militarily as best as it can, that the presence of that military is strong, much stronger than I think the Arab countries thought they would be. But the question now is, so when does whomever tell whomever and everyone else to it's time to go get them? Let's just shut them down. Obviously, there's a few players that have to be off that table, one of them being the United States. And I don't even think they even have to officially be off the table. I think the Arab world will do whatever it wants to do. And like you said, we'll
all
be
we
we'll
have to
be
do is be
preoccupied.
preoccupied, right? All that would have to happen is for the United States to be preoccupied in, and something like Yellowstone or Long Valley certainly would accomplish that, but it doesn't have to be at that level. It could be at something less that's large, significant enough to require the United States to basically say, take care of yourselves. We got things to worry
Yep.
about at home.
All you got to do is blow up enough static up in what is it across from the middle of the country to blow out all of our electronics or something like that, and that'll put us
Yeah.
back for a while, and it'll take forever to fix. So there's a great thing. There's a great idea for you, China. It's interesting. When we were talking here at the beginning, you were talking about those on the left with the woke agenda. I actually am having Chris Roseborough back on the show. We're doing a taping in January. I don't know if you followed my two shows with him. The one was just talking about, how he got into exposing a lot of these false prophets out there. The last one we talked about the myths of cessationalism and myths within continualism that exist. And he focuses on three things that he really, kind of focuses on. One is he's anti Rick Warren. So he talks all about those. He focuses on the false prophet kind of idea, all of the people who were out there, because he came out of, I forget what the cult was, but he was there for like years and came out of some massive, weird, charismatic cult out. And when I say weird, it was weird out in like Washington State or something. But he also addresses woke theology and basically shuts it down. And so when I talked to him last time, we were talking about it. So he's coming back on the show, and I guess to better understand the woke agenda and woke theology, we have to have a better, clear understanding of what modern and postmodern are. So he's going to come on and do that. But it was interesting that you were talking about that at the beginning, because we're actually going to have a show that kind of talks a little bit more about the liberal woke agenda and woke theology and the unscriptural components to all of that. So that'll be kind of interesting. I don't know if you followed any of it, but I just threw it out there.
I saw the first session with Chris, but I didn't see the second one. But I'm not a fan of woke.
Yeah, no,
I loved
I'm
it
not.
when after Rick DeSantis had gotten reelected as governor down in Florida, and he came out famously and said, "Woke is Florida's where woke goes to die." I love that.
Well, Steve, it was great to go over some of these recent events, and it's been a while since we connected, so it was good to kind of get up to date, and great to have you on the show again as we tackle news through the eyes of Scripture, and we look at some of the events here in the United States, as well as some of the events happening over, especially in the Middle East and around the world. I'm Mike Beckett,
I'm Steve Winters.
and we'll see you next time here on the show. Have a great day. Oh, is it time?